Okay, 51st State is a card game not unlike Pokemon or Magic the Gathering from my bygone eras of childhood, but instead it's about rebuilding America after, for whatever reason, it has fallen. This game is complicated and very self-destructive of itself. So hopefully over the next 10 or so minutes I will be able to show you how to play this game and let you know whether or not I recommend this game. Over the last week, Cammie and I have played this game and we've come to a decent understanding on how we feel about it. Why is she not in this? She's not here right now and I'm kind of bored, so I'm going to make this video for y'all. Alright, let's get started. Okay, 51st State. The premise of this game is the United States has fallen. Oh no, why? Well, it doesn't really say why. I would like to think that the American Dad, so Stan Smith's worst nightmare came true or something to the fact of that. Why? Because I like Stan Smith. He is ridiculous in every way possible, yet still somehow likable. Now, there are 4 federations. So, I'm sorry, 4 different groups that you will be playing as, or can choose to play as. Appalachian Federation, New York, the Mutants Union, which needs an apostrophe, and the Merchants Guild, which also needs an apostrophe. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to build up your empire, alright, and make civilization the best you can. So there are, in general, 3 actions that you can do. You can either A, take over a place for a one-time use, you can add it to your empire, or you can trade with them and have a permanent use but in a different way other than adding it to your empire. Confused yet? I sure was. So, to try and explain your 3 actions again, you can add it to your empire, which is this white bit right here. So if you discard a card, you get a gear. Or you can trade with them and have a permanent gear each turn. Or you can conquer them, take them over or whatever, for a one-time payout of 2 gears and 2 extra cards. Alright? And the way that you would play this is, if you add it to your empire, it would go beside. If you wanted to trade, then you would essentially just do this, so that it shows that. Or, if you want to conquer, you would flip it around, and there we go. So, that is essentially the 3 actions of the game. Now let's complicate things more. Okay, each turn has 5 parts. I know, quite ridiculous, just saying. Alright, part 1 is you will lay out 5 cards. Why 5? Because I'm set it up for 2 people to play. Why? Because that's usually how many people play in my house. Alright, so we have 5 cards. Player 1 will choose a card. So let's say this one. Why not? So what we're looking at is a plane wreck. That's now in my hand. Alright, everyone knows that's in my hand. Player 2 goes, maybe they grab that. Alright, and then I take this. Ooh, a church. How noble of me. Alright. Player 2, for whatever reason, we draw a card, and then I grab one. Oh yes, and one last thing of the first part of your turn is once everyone's chosen one, the first player will choose a card followed by the next, 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 and so on until the end of the world. Alright? That is the first part of your turn. The second part of your turn is payout. Alright, so I'm getting paid 2 of these and 2 cards. 1, 2, so hooray for me. I'm also getting, come on, focus, 3 people and 1 fuel. So that translates to 2 years, 3 people, 1 fuel. And now I can use this stuff. This one costs 1, 2, and 1, and so on. Now, because that one's red and it's one-time use, he goes away. Alright? Have we touched the cards that we just chose in the first part yet? No, of course not, because that makes too much sense. Okay, so part 3 of your turn. Remember the hand that we had earlier? I sure didn't, but now that we're on the third part, we finally get to do things. So I will choose to incorporate into my empire. So that costs me 2. So I have the ability to incorporate up to a 2 thing, but because I have this also, I'm going to use this. So now I can afford, now I can afford the 3. Hooray, hooray. So, what does this card give me? Well, if it would ever focus, you would be able to see that for every time that I used a conquering card, I get 2 victory points. Now, one could say, well, now you're going to run off and just start conquering things like crazy to build up victory points. Why? Because 30 victory points equals victory for the whole game. Well, for whatever reason, you can only score each card of these, so each card 3 times. Alright? Well, what does that make sense for? I don't really know, but that's the rules of the game. Okay, so my first action turn is over because I'm playing by myself. The other person really hasn't done anything. So basically what you do is you do an action, he would do an action, or she, whatever, would do an action, and then back to me until finally we pass. And we typically pass when we have nothing else we can really do. In my case, I was able to do this incorporation into my empire, and this trading venture, which will give me a gun so I can start conquering things, thereby I can start using this card. Alright, now, do we get a payout? No. So, this is the end of the action phase of your turn. Alright? The fourth part of your turn is counting victory points. So far, it looks like I have one item in my empire, so I have 1 victory point. Hooray, hooray. So we don't actually put a victory point token onto this. No, we just count each card in your empire until as 1 victory point. Okay? The fifth part of the turn is where you get to clean up. Remember these 3 guys that you had and did nothing with? Well, guess what? They're now gone. Don't worry though, every turn you'll get them replenished. Really kind of defeats the point of cleanup, but who am I to say anything? So, I lose these 2 and this because I use them, and so I have all the things to go away. And that was part 5 of your turn. Okay, so the various types of cards are non-working and non-production cards, so they just have benefits for using them. Then we have working cards that other people cannot use, but you can. So each time you discard a card, you get a brick when you have a worker there. Now, let's say that I do this once, get a brick, hooray, hooray. Let's say I want this again, so I discard another card. I have to use 2 people to use this again. Why? Because somehow it makes it harder to do when there's someone else there. Alright, and you can do this up to 2 times. Okay, now there are leaders, so for every gasoline type card you have or use, then you get a victory point. You have a maximum of victory points eligible for this person of 5, and that's with all of the leaders, whether it's Mr. President or whoever. And then you have production cards, and this one, oddly enough, no one else can use either. Some of them will have this, that means that someone else can use the same card, but they have to pay you a worker. Alright? So this one, every turn, because it's in your empire, so let's say it's right here, it gives you an extra dude. Hooray, hooray. Okay? Now, let's say, for instance, that I have overused this, so now it's got 2, 4, 6 victory points, and I can no longer use this anymore. Well, I pay a brick, and that magically transfers all of the victory points over to this guy, and I can build on top of it, so long as one of the 2 symbols here match. Okay? So that's how that works. Now, that does not mean that you have 1, 2, 3 victory points by counting the cards. No, it's 1 and 2 still. Why? Because as far as we're concerned, this card back here no longer exists. Laid out on this spread here is the different kinds of little tokens, which, by the way, fills up 2 pillboxes. Alright? Just saying, this is the only time I've ever had to buy pillboxes and use a Ziploc bag for the different kinds of tokens in a game. So this tells you where my main point of exhaustion is with this game. This is the starting player token right here. Here are the various kinds of resources. So you have gas, gears, stone, guns, and universal. Here are the various player tokens. So it's a 2 to 4 player game. And you have the different factions there. Here are the different little freebies you can use for taking over things. So you have your conquer, your corporate, your merchant, and then universal. Then you have a card thing, which quite frankly I've never used in game and still refuse to learn this rule. So if you want to know what it means, look it up in the rule book. And the worker himself. Alright? Now, if you ever get confused on any of these, this is what the rule book has for you to explain everything out. Now, this is probably the best part of the rule book. The final note I'll make on this before my concluding statement is, well, this is all great and good, but how do we count our victory points, or do I have to constantly keep up with how many victory points each person has based off of literally counting the things that it lays before them? Well, no. On the back of the box, there is a counter for victory points, and you will put your little dude and count to the wonderful number of 30, which is somewhere around here. There he is. And this is how you keep up with where you are in regards of someone else in the game. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad that they put it on the back of the box. I am, however, saying that it would have been cooler if they would have just made something that would fit within the box. Okay, so this is what the end of a game looks like, and this is Cammie's side. And you can tell that her empire here was a lot bigger than mine over there. And that was part of what made her win. Alright, and I usually play as a Merchants Guild, which still needs the apostrophe S instead of just an S. Or at least an apostrophe after the S, assuming that there's more than one merchant. Anyways, she was stacking pretty early 3s, as you can see here, and there's a 4 there and such. But this is what helped her, along with having, random points here and there, and each one of these cards adds up as 1 victory point. Okay? So this is what the end of the game looks like. So, would we recommend?
Would I recommend? I enjoy the game. I think it's a fun game. I think that it really makes you think. I do think that the initial learning the rules is absolutely crazy insane. But that being said, once you actually know the rules, then they're actually very simple.
I agree. It's a lot like playing Pokemon or Magic or any one of these complicated deck building games. So for some people it's hard to get into, and that would be the biggest negative for it. It is pretty difficult to get into, but once you understand, once you know what you're doing, then suddenly it starts resembling fun. So, would I recommend it? I would say that it is a chore to get into. So, if you can enjoy like a sweet after doing chores, I would recommend this game. If you cannot get your sweet after chores and just have to eat the sweet first, then I would not recommend the game.